Hey, this is Brian.
This is Josh.
Hi, I'm Tyler. I'll be your special guest today on this episode of Curiosity Continuum.
Thanks for joining us on Curiosity Continuum today, special edition with returning guest Tyler. And today it's part of the theme of self-sufficiency as we go along in the world today. Tyler had another topic that he wanted to talk to everybody about, kind of related to helping you do your life a little bit outside of what we just call conventional, going to the store and buying food and all that entails. So we wanted to let Tyler have the mic a little bit today to discuss another topic that he wanted to bring to everybody's attention, is about having your own livestock on your property.
Yeah, I think one of the most overlooked livestock options is actually the meat rabbit.
Okay.
They're cute, yes, but they're also the easiest livestock in my opinion. They were bred about 100 years ago specifically for meat. So they're no longer a wild animal. They're a domesticated farm animal.
So just so people got the idea, they're like, what size are they? Are they bigger or smaller than a rabbit we would see outside, or stuff like that?
Well, there are a few different types of breeds.
Okay.
I recommend the New Zealand White.
Okay.
This breed, if I remember correctly, can get about 8 pounds. Best harvesting size.
which is big for a rabbit.
It's pretty
Yeah.
big. Yeah. You typically would harvest it before then at about 3 or 4 months old, and I think it'd be about 5 or 6 pounds.
Okay.
That's when it's going to be called a fryer. It's a more tender, delicious meat. This livestock is actually so simple. It just kind of sits and chills in the cage. It hops around a little bit, but it mostly sleeps and eats and poops. And you can, once you know what you're doing, you can have a fresh rabbit on your table in about 10 minutes.
So let's talk about this a little bit, because you said 100 years ago, rabbits were more popular as far as a choice. So do you know when the shift happened, when they moved away from rabbits and it became more chicken or something like that? Like, what was the thing that happened in culture? Do you know?
No, I don't know.
Okay. That's okay. It's okay.
But
So,
why?
But if you want me to do a historical thing, I could prepare that for you.
okay. So let's pivot a little bit. So when people think about rabbits, I think a lot of times nowadays they're only thinking about them as, they're a pet or something like
or a
that.
wild animal.
Right.
Right.
Something that you see in the field jumping through, or like in Bambi or something like that. When you talk about these big rabbits, like you said, they're specifically so that people have like a meat protein source. Very easy, correct? Tell me, can you give a little bit of the profile of what rabbit meat tastes like? I think some folks, especially, some have had it, some have not. And would you talk just a little bit about some of the flavor profiles, just so people get a little bit of a frame of reference
Well,
for
the
it?
domesticated meat rabbits are a pretty mild flavored rabbit. They're not as gamey as maybe a wild rabbit would be. The New Zealand Whites have been totally white meat, very lean. And they can be cooked in a variety of ways. You can put them in a stew with herbs. You can saute them. You can bake them.
Braise them. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff.
All sorts of stuff. I plan on trying to make some rabbit burgers. And,
okay.
And some, maybe instead of pulled pork, pulled rabbit, and maybe instead of chicken salad, rabbit salad.
Okay.
Okay.
Tons of stuff. Anything you can do with other meat, you pretty much can do.
And rabbits are pretty feed efficient too. Like right. They don't take a lot of food.
They are. Yeah.
So that was something that Tyler touched on his last episode too. He was talking about growing his own vegetables. Well, some of the stuff he grows, he actually gives to his rabbits.
Actually, I give a little bit of what I grow to my rabbits, but the great thing about rabbits is they eat what humans cannot eat a lot of the time.
Okay.
So those random weeds growing in my yard, I grab a handful of those, toss them in the cage, and the rabbits eat that, convert it to meat in their body, and they also poop out the best fertilizer any livestock can produce.
Okay, cool.
It's very good to know. So you're talking about basically an animal, because I think a lot of times when people think about livestock today, and the concerns they have is like, this is what it takes and how it's like kind of harming certain environmental or ecosystem things, right? But you're talking about this rabbit where it eats the weeds that you can't use.
It's living in symbiosis with what you have.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of soil biology and nutrition that comes from their waste
Right.
that I add to my garden that increases everything further. It's like this wonderful circle that just keeps getting better and better.
Okay, cool.
We highly recommend that you put the rabbit droppings in the garden and let that, enhance the food you're going to eat. Don't just eat it directly for the nutrients. Don't do that.
Yeah, don't eat that part. The other good aspects of raising rabbits, besides their utter simplicity and improving soil quality and highly nutritious lean meat, is that they're just quiet. They don't make any noise, basically. And that not only that, but they are extremely productive. You got 2 rabbits, within a year, you could have 50.
Sure. Because they're well.
Everybody knows what they say about rabbits.
Yeah.
Yes.
But let's go over their life cycle a little bit. Like, how long, does it take to breed rabbits? For example, like these rabbits from birth, like you said, a few months you can harvest them. But is that from birth to?
Well, so they need about 6 months before they are mature enough to breed.
Okay.
And then the actual breeding takes 5 minutes.
Right.
And then a month later,
They're very
they'll-
efficient at it.
Yeah. They kind of just vibrate and then fall over. It's kind of it's fun to watch, actually. It's kind of funny. And so then about a month later, the doe will give birth
Okay.
to anywhere from 5 to 15 or so kits, and then those you can eat at about 3 months.
Okay.
Okay.
And then so from one birth, you have 25 pounds of healthy meat.
Sure.
Okay. Let's talk about space requirements. So, because I know as people, again, are in smaller spaces or they live in the, how much space does it take, like per rabbit, for them to have like a nice life, and to be able to be comfortable and be healthy?
Okay, so we're talking about a domesticated farm kind of rabbit. They were bred to be in cages. So you might think like, oh, that's so sad that they lived their whole life in a cage, but unfortunately, they're domesticated, so they could not survive.
They don't have any skills
No.
to.
No, not at all. They're kind of dopey,
docile.
Yeah, they're docile, and not only that, but they're susceptible to diseases if they're on the ground anyway.
Okay.
So, in terms of space requirements, the cage should be, roughly 2 feet long, 1 foot wide, and a foot and a half tall, something like that. It doesn't need to be too big, and these cages should be hanging. So, my particular setup has it has 4 cages, and they are stacked on top of each other with like a little ramp in between them that just kind of funnels all the poop into a bin,
Which goes in your garden then.
and which goes right into my garden.
Okay. And obviously, people would have to check with their local municipality if they need it. But
I guess technically you're probably supposed to check, but if nobody knows you have rabbits,
but what you're saying too, is that the space requirement is super minimal. So
Super minimal,
it's not going to impact like a neighbor or anything. They're quiet. They're not like
No.
roosters or whatever.
I don't think anyone will ever even know I have rabbits unless
Unless
I
you tell them,
specifically
or they
tell
see
them.
them.
They don't make any noise, and you need to keep them protected from the elements,
Right.
and direct sunlight and rain and predators.
Right.
Definitely.
Right. Yeah.
And so no one will ever see them or hear them. So it's kind of like my secret little thing I have, just in case the zombies come.
Yeah.
I got a food source.
Okay. All right. So what else did you want to talk about? You want to talk about more about rabbits, or did you have some other livestock you want to talk about?
Well, one quick little note about rabbits is you can also, if you need to, you can use their fur as well for garments.
Okay.
But that's kind of low priority if you ask me.
It's a little warm in Florida, I think, to use a rabbit
Don't
as
need
a...
them at
Yeah.
all. So then the other livestock I wanted to mention was the most popular one, which is chickens. Okay. Those are also incredibly easy to raise. I like to just let mine wander around the garden, and they poop on it. They improve fertility as well. But I like to set up things so it requires very little work.
Okay.
And so my chickens require roughly 5 minutes a day.
Okay. So are your chickens? Are you raising them for meat, or are you raising them for eggs, or both?
I get so much meat. I get so much meat from the rabbits
That you don't really
that
need
I
anymore?
don't. I don't need chicken meat, but of course I'll eat them once their egg production starts to wane.
Sure.
At about 2 years old.
So, okay, that's what I was going to ask, because a lot of people probably don't realize that, but chickens don't have unlimited egg production for years and years.
They have quite a good...
They have good egg production for a short amount of time.
Exactly. Well, yeah, they start laying about 6 months, and they'll lay roughly 6 eggs a week, almost once a day for like a year and a half to 2 years.
Okay, so that's
it's great.
It's great, yeah.
And of course, they like the kitchen scraps even more than the rabbits.
Sure.
Like they can eat fruit a lot more, and they can eat meat, and they wander around and eat bugs, and they can eat greens too.
Sure.
So I always like to, if I have a waste, I always try and think, how can I make this not a waste, and instead something I can use and change into something even better. And so kitchen scraps is an example of that.
Right.
Just like rabbit poop.
Right. It's like ultimate recycling.
Yeah.
Can we just have a
Not only is it
little...
not wasteful, it's actually improving things.
Right. Can we have a little conversation about egg yolk color when you have chickens? Because especially in America, you're used to like seeing like a yolk, and it's like a pale yellow. But it's not a pale yellow when your chickens are out living their best life.
That pale yellow is from a poor chicken diet. A lot of times the cheap eggs you get from the store were laid by chickens that have never seen the light of day. They may have their beaks cut off so they don't peck each other out of insanity and boredom. And they're just kind of given the most cheap food that the corporation knows will keep them alive. They're pumped full of antibiotics because their conditions are so disgusting. And so my chickens are going to lay deep yellow yolks, which are going to be full of nutrition that I
Like
need.
deep yellow, almost orange, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. Not only that, but in countries where the conditions are better, they don't even need to fertilize they don't even need to refrigerate their eggs.
Right.
Here in America, we are used to putting eggs in the freezer or in the fridge because they're so unhealthy and unsanitary, and that we've had to clean off their protective layers of the eggs, and so they can't be outside. Whereas when I collect eggs, I'll be able to just let them sit on the counter for a couple weeks.
Right. Now I remember that brings me back to something my dad used to say. Like they used to get eggs, and they never had them in the refrigerator. They put them in either the root cellar or the basement. Been there for months, like month.
Yeah, they're fine on their own. It's when we do this factory farming stuff that everything starts to get all shady.
So this is like something that I think this is a great thing to bring up, because this is one of those things that because it's happened for a few generations now, people think this is the normal.
Yeah, when in fact it's actually kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's not the normal, and it's not the way it should be.
Right. When you go to other places in the world, I have a friend who's from Croatia. When I think when she went back and brought somebody that wasn't Croatian, and they were American, they're like, "What's wrong with the eggs?" And they're like, "What do you mean, what's wrong?" It's like, it's orange. It's like, well, that's the color it's supposed to be.
Right.
But the context is so warped here because we're so used to just going and seeing that, and like it's the result of other things that people have put into the eggs. So when you guys and gals go to restaurants and you say, "Hey, I'd like to, order some eggs," go ahead and start paying attention to the color of the yolk. Like if it's more of a deep golden orange, or if it's more of a pale
especially
yellow.
if you're ordering and they say it's like a farm free or free range, or it's organic, or
cage free,
or whatever term that they want to use for this, flavor of the day.
If that yolk is a pale yellow, you may have been had.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, Tyler. So is there anything else you wanted to mention? I know that I only saw you had rabbits and chickens, but you said you were mentioning you're thinking of some other stuff. So what were you thinking of?
At some point, I may get goats.
Okay.
They're a little bit higher maintenance than rabbits and chickens. Everything is. With one slaughter, you can get a lot more meat with a goat because it's a bigger animal. And plus, if you like dairy, then you get raw goat's milk.
You can make goat cheese. You could do a bunch of other stuff.
Lots of stuff with that. And so I don't know if your listeners are aware, but raw milk, they can be dangerous. And so we're all a little nervous about it, but it's also way tastier, way richer, and more nutritious.
Well, sure, because you got
pasteurized.
You didn't scrape anything off of it or anything like that.
Yeah.
So let's back up on that context too. So in a previous episode with Tyler, he was talking about the types of varieties of things he grows in his garden, and he reminded us that a lot of things we see in the store were meant to have a certain color or a certain durability during transport to get there. And so like something in your local garden doesn't, because you can just go out in your backyard, grab it, and that kind of thing. Well, now when you start talking about things like raw milk, and we've seen people who are like way on one side of the issue and way on the other side. But I think this is important to know, like if you're drinking raw milk or something like this, like from a goat that's living in your backyard, you know exactly everything that's going on. You have a much
You're more
greater
informed.
context. Yeah, and you're not trying to ship it across the nation
you're just gonna put
to
it in
get to
your
the other side of
your
right. It's just
house.
I'm going outside and that's it.
Yep.
And so I think that's where when people start to realize that, like, you know, if it's not traveling very far, it's not getting into environments where it's like it's on a truck, it just hit 140 degrees and then it's 30 degrees and all that weirdness. You kind of have a
Right.
better gauge on what's going on.
Sure, because there are some good aspects to regulations. We're a lot safer drinking that mass-produced milk in the store because it's been pasteurized, but that's because the conditions are not as healthy as they're going to be in your backyard if you know what you're doing. And plus there's a lot of transportation that goes along as well. But if it's 20 feet away from your refrigerator while it's being produced, then you don't need to take into account the fact that it needs to go on a semi.
Yeah, because it's not
across
going
the
to grow
country.
bacteria from 10 feet out your back door to your refrigerator.
Right.
Yeah, you're not going to. It's not going to be in a lukewarm environment for.
Yeah.
Yeah, and of course, some of this stuff there is a learning curve. Of course,
Right.
you need to know what you're doing, keep yourself safe, but it's really not as complicated as people think. And if you don't have the time, encourage your neighbor to do it for you.
Yeah.
And you can foster.
Or you guys can,
community.
you can actually start talking to your neighbors, and maybe you guys could have a garden together.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
That's something we're sorely lacking in
Yeah.
this country today is a sense of community and neighbors who know each
I
other.
think they said
and
something like only 30% of their people know their neighbors.
It must be something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah. When I moved here, I was shocked that we had neighborhood bonfires and stuff.
Really?
like
That's
that.
cool.
That's so rare these days, and I think we need it.
Yeah. So what do you think, Brian?
I think it's a good place to put a comma in the conversation for now. So until next time, this is Brian
Josh.
for Curiosity. Oh,
And no. Do it.
And I'm Tyler.
for Curiosity Continuum.